Hey, it's David. Today I wanted to talk about Flashes of Elation. And like pretty much all the episodes I've done lately, I'm just shooting from the hip. I'm speaking off the cuff. None of this is really worked out in advance. I might turn over some ideas in my mind here and there as I think about recording these episodes, or how I might want to in the first place. But at the end of the day, this is not scripted. This is just me showing up. And that's the way most things have been lately. I think about Spark Infinity, and as far as live streaming goes, yeah, I put in some time as far as preparation goes. I try to create documents for my team. I try to give them a little bit of a sense of an idea of what we're going to be talking about and questions and themes and stuff like that. At the end of the day, though, not a lot. Like, those documents are half a page. They're not even a full page, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 pages. And I mean, that's something I have, it's kind of a luxury, I think. It's just through experience. I've been doing this so long, I can really show up to, and there's definitely interviews or specific people I would have to prepare for and would want to prepare for and would feel bad if I didn't prepare for. But the vast majority of conversations that I do now, I can show up and I can bring the conversation to where I want it to go and ask questions, and oftentimes the types of questions that people might not ask, so I can get into crevices where most people don't get. From day one, that's always been, it's not like a core thing, but in the background, that is one of the things. I didn't want to just make a music podcast and then have conversations about, so what are your influences? And then, okay, that's great. Now, let's talk about your latest album. Like, yes, I want to bring up those topics, but hopefully I can bring them up in a way that's a lot more personal and would hopefully bring out things in the artists or bring out things in the people I'm talking to that they would not otherwise discuss. So those questions are fine, I guess, but they're not amazing. And that's why that was never the ethos of what I do. And that might be one of the reasons I'm not mainstream, because I don't do mainstream things. I'm looking at it because honestly, I can see the benefit in not always reinventing the wheel. Even David Bowie, after 2 decades or 15 years of slugging it out, eventually said, okay, I'm embracing the mainstream now. And he did. I would still say Let's Dance is a masterpiece. It may not be his best album, but it's an extraordinary accomplishment, and it's not so mainstream that you would expect to hear that exact sound in mainstream music. It kind of became that, and he was kind of embracing the styles at the time. But when you really listen to it, it's like, this is still David Bowie, and you can tell that it is. I guess in that way too, like, I've slugged it out long enough to say I'm okay with embracing the mainstream. I'm ready to embrace it a little more than I have been to this point. But I'm also okay with being edgy, and I'm okay with being a bit of a misfit or just different, because I've always been that way. I don't want to constantly be an innovator, because then you're always walking uphill. So I wanted to talk about Flashes of Elation. To get to the point. I always seem to have these rambling preambles now, but I suppose that is fitting with this quote-unquote new format that I have stumbled upon with a podcast. And honestly, it kind of works because I am able to batch episodes, sit down for, I don't know, half an hour, and bang out a few episodes. So at least for the time being, this is kind of a working model to show up and give you updates and share what's been going on in the week. I wanted to talk about Flashes of Elation. I think possibly some people are still wondering whether it's out, so that's the first thing. Let's just address that. Yes, the book's out already. I don't know if you noticed. So there were many people interested. There were regular or frequent readers of Music Entrepreneur HQ that were interested. There were people that either interviewed me or brought me into their community to share masterclasses and things like that were interested. There were many categories of people that were ultimately interested in getting the book. And I know they probably don't know about it, or they've forgotten about it, or they've completely lost interest in it. I can't do anything about the last category of completely lost interest in it. But if you happen to be listening to this going like, so when is this book coming out? It's out. Flashes of Elation is available. It's available in Kindle. It's available in paperback and hardcover. I personally looked at and inspected and have touched paperback and hardcover copies, and they're great. They're really nice. Whenever I have a new book, I often do bring it to social gatherings and success clubs or whatever else I might happen to be attending at the time. And it's always nice when people take interest, and I do end up selling some copies that way too. So that has already happened with Flashes of Elation. I think by the time this show comes out, let me back up a bit. There's people who pre-ordered Flashes of Elation that are owed a copy. And ultimately, those people aren't just getting a copy of the book. They're getting a bunch of other amazing bonuses as a bundle in the mail. And I hope they're thrilled. I hope they're excited about receiving it when they do eventually get it, because they're deserving. They're the early adopters. They're the people who believed in me early on. And I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful for that. So they're getting a bunch of extra stuff that otherwise people would not get. And I was promising a few bonuses anyway to the people who pre-ordered. So gradually but surely delivering on everything. In fact, I was really hoping to have that all squared away by now, but January's been crazy and we're into February now, and February is still pretty crazy. I don't know if it's going to let up. It's not really showing any signs of letting up. I thought I was done with the overtime cluster, and there's more overtime to do. It's optional. I don't have to do it. But as you can imagine, when you've got something good going, and I do have something good going in my career, and that's something I'm now proud of as well, because I don't have to do stuff like this anymore. I don't have to do the podcasts. I don't have to do Spark Infinity. I've got tons of content out there, blog posts, podcast episodes, videos. I've got 11 or 12 books out there now, various courses out there now. I've got music out there. I've got so much stuff out there now. I don't have to show up and do anything anymore. This is now completely by choice, because I support the artistic community. I love the artistic community. This is a niche in which I've operated in for a long time. And the only way, or the specific way in which I've pivoted, quote unquote, is that I'm now serving a broader base of creatives. But at the end of the day, it's very much what I was doing before. So pre-orders, people who pre-ordered the book, I want to get this out in February for sure. And by the time you hear this episode, like I said, I think it should all be squared away. What is the book about? I really think the subtitle covers it, so I'm not going to expand on that a lot. It's called Navigating the World as a Sensitive Creative Soul. So it's focusing on the sensitive creative. Is every creative sensitive? No. And that's a conversation that I've had, and I'm acknowledging that. And it does cover a category of people that might otherwise be known as sensitive intuitives, intuitive sensitives, or deeply sensitive people. By now I've seen a variety of acronyms, so I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but those are some that come to mind right now. It's people who are intensely sensitive, people who often, although not always, I think with the Myers-Briggs test, end up like INFJ or INTJ, somewhere in that category. People who have yet to fully fathom the fact that what appears to be a weakness, what appears to bring about a lot of situations in life that are completely undesirable, are ultimately a strength. Understanding yourself, your strengths, what you're capable of, the specific way and you're wired, and all of its advantages and all of its good sides. That's what I talk about in this book. And it's about my journey as well as a sensitive creative. I don't know if I totally fit that category anymore, but at one time I did. And the story of this, I don't know if people, like in the past, people kind of just said, don't label yourself. And so I get that point too. And I think what I'm trying to say is like, we can all evolve. I would definitely say I would evolve past the person that I was as I was writing that book. However, because it was a capsule in time, I left most of the content as it was, or at least the intended meaning and what I was trying to say at the time. I left it alone. I didn't edit that. I did write a kind of a concise afterword explaining how I have a different perspective at this point. I didn't necessarily get into a lot of specifics, but I would say that I don't know if I'm a deeply sensitive person anymore. Back then I was, and that's why I kept a lot of that text. And the story goes something like this, that in 2014, I basically lost my business, I lost the girl, and I lost my faith, or at least my faith in the specific religious capacity that I was a part of. And that sucked. In that summer, I was depressed, and I was praying. And I don't know if you know that expression, like prayers hit the ceiling. It's like they don't reach God, is what that means, if that makes sense. They're just hitting the dome. They're just hitting the ceiling above without reaching anybody. That's how it felt. And visually, I could kind of connect with, or I could see, it was almost like I was on the rails. I was on a train track, and I could see where I was going. But at this specific moment in life, the train took me into the desert, and there were no more train tracks. And the train left me there to figure things out by myself. That's how I felt emotionally. And finally, I was just like so frustrated. I think I was frustrated with myself and fighting my identity, perhaps fighting who I truly am, not fully accepting who I really am, which is frighteningly relevant today. I think I have a much better understanding. I think I've worked through a lot of things. I think I've released a lot of blockages and developing into the person that I truly am or truly meant to be. I don't know if meant to be is really a thing, but I'm just using it because it's a convenient expression in this context. So in frustration, I go to YouTube. I type in how to live as a sensitive person or something along those lines, and up comes Heidi Sawyer. At the time, she probably would have been the equivalent of like a deer staring into headlights, or a normal common person looking into the eyes of an alien. My experience of her was something like that. But the more I listened to her, there was such a practical aspect to what she was sharing. Whether or not I bought into her, I think she was using tarot, but she was using some kind of cards, and probably still does. And I think she had some kind of association, or still does have association, with Kabbalahism. And I only know so much about the Tree of Life and that kind of stuff, but I guess I have a cursory knowledge of what that is and how all that works. But there was such a practical aspect. I think there was one audio specifically where she listed off a whole bunch of things. It was just like, if you're a highly sensitive person, then you've probably experienced this, and you probably feel this, and you've probably been through something like this, and this is probably generally what you experience in different situations in life. And she just went through a whole list of things, and I was like, dear Lord, like, I don't know if I can be a yes to all of them, but pretty well 80-90% of what she said resonated with me. Then I had a aha, and I kind of woke up, and that really helped me through a tough time when I was depressed. Pretty sure I was playing Tony Hawk at the time. Was it Tony Hawk HD or something? It was the really bad one that was made for PC. Like, the controls were really stiff in an odd way. At first I didn't notice it, but the more I played, I was like, I don't know, there's something off here. I still had fun with it, but I was like so depressed that I probably didn't even notice how bad the gameplay was. Maybe that was a good thing. And so that was my experience that summer. And that, I think, was really the catalyst to me engaging in this book. I mean, I really wanted to write. I clearly had a passion for it. It's something I wanted to do more of, and I wanted to be successful in it. And so I got into the habit of writing a lot. At one point, I was writing or attempting to write one ebook per week on different topics, mostly ebooks that I wanted to sell, I think. And really the goal was to fill them with 5,000 words of valuable content. It was like very ambitious sort of goals. And one day I sat down to begin writing something, and I was like, this is not going to be 5,000 words. It's going to be something much more than that. And I was like, there's something here. And so I put that aside and I saved it. And I was like, this is going to become a book. And that's Flashes of Elation. So I'm sure I could elaborate on the book and its themes in a variety of other ways. There's so many more things I could potentially talk about, but I think that's kind of enough for a preview. That's enough for you to decide if it's something you want to look deeper into. Because if you're a deeply sensitive person, you're looking for communities or you're looking for any kind of resource. If you felt the way I did when I was searching in desperation on YouTube, didn't know I was going to come across Heidi Sawyer. But if that describes you, then I would invite you. And I think you're going to get something out of Flashes of Elation. Flashes of Elation, navigating the world as a sensitive creative soul. So that's it for today. I'm sure I could ramble on and on and on about this if I wanted to, but I gotta cut this off at a sensible point. So this has been Creativity, Excitement, Emotion. I'm David Andrew Wiebe. Talk to you again soon.